Hungary. Hungary ranks 89 out of 180 on the Press Freedom Index. Things did not improve in 2019. It was a relatively quiet year in the Hungarian media. There were no major changes in the ownership structure. The pro-government media foundation, the Central European Press and Media Foundation, as KESMA in Hungarian, dominates the media landscape, and the market distortion of state advertising to media is still going on. Access to information is more and more difficult for independent journalists, and they are banned from freely asking politicians in parliament or from attending different events. Government politicians do not give interviews to government-critical media outlets. Press departments of public institutions typically do not reply to questions of independent media. The Media Council was re-elected in December 2019. Only the nominees of the ruling party, Fidesz, were elected as new members of Hungary's most powerful media regulatory body. Fidesz's MPs in Parliament's ad hoc nomination committee rejected all candidates of the opposition parties. I would now like to read to you an update from March 2020 on the 30th. A piece written by IPI, the International Press Institute. Hungary. Press freedom threatened as Orban handed new powers. The International Press Institute, a global network of editors, media executives, and leading journalists for press freedom, today expressed serious concern over the passing of new legislation handing Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban sweeping new powers to rule by decree and tighten his control over the country's media amid the COVID-19 pandemic. On April 30th, Orban Fidesz's party, which already had a firm grasp on many of the country's institutions, voted by a two-thirds majority to extend the national state of emergency over the pandemic, giving the government powers to bypass parliament and rule without checks and balances for an indefinite period. The new law also criminalizes the spreading of misinformation deemed to undermine the authorities' fight against the COVID-19 virus, with fines and up to 5 years in prison. Orban and Fidesz have frequently used accusations of fake news to attack critical journalists and have built up a vast pro-government media empire to blanket the country with official messaging. This is a dark day for press freedom in Hungary, IPI Deputy Director Scott Griffin said. Viktor Orban has yet another tool in his arsenal for silencing what remains of the country's independent press. He added, "This is not about fighting disinformation. The Hungarian government is taking advantage of a health emergency to accelerate its extensive control over news and information in the country, regardless of whether the law is applied in practice. The potential for censorship is enormous and damaging at a time when independent journalism is more essential than ever." Last week, the IPI warned the new legislation represented a step towards total information control and the further suppression of press freedom in the country. Along with 7 other media freedom partners, IPI also wrote last week to the European leaders calling them to publicly condemn the move and ensure that the media freedom would be guaranteed in Hungary and other European states. The Secretary General of the Council of Europe and the Human Rights Commissioner of the Council of Europe and the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, among others, expressed public concern about the legislation. An IPI-led report published last year described how the Fidesz party has systematically dismantled media independence, freedom, and pluralism, and divided the journalistic community in the country over the past 10 years, giving it a degree of media control unprecedented in any EU member state.
Poggers.